Hello everyone, welcome to Conversation Series and its second part that we are organizing to discuss and share the knowledge and the insights about empathy in academia and in also industry in human-computer interaction. And what is empathy, how to invoke it or how to measure it, what is the feature of the empathic systems. And in this series of events with our guests, we are trying to discuss these questions and create a community around the empathy-centric design. In the first part, as usual, we will listen to our guest speakers and their discussion. And the second part, we plan to create a town hall-like event session that all the participants, all of the people now in the meeting can participate in the discussion with their thoughts and the questions. And also by using the Q&A option of Zoom below the screen, you can find, and you can write your questions and thoughts, and I can read these for you after the first session. This is the second event that we hold, and I mentioned it, and Carine, Lallemand and Luce Drouet are with us today. And Carine is an assistant professor in the Department of Industrial Design at the Eindhoven University of Technology and HCI Research Group at the University of Luxembourg. And she holds a PhD in psychology and HCI, human-computer interaction. And her research is mainly focused on the design and evaluation of user experience. And Luce is a user experience researcher at CFL, the Luxembourgish Railway Service. And she holds her PhD in human-computer interaction from the University of Luxembourg in the same group of Carine. And Luce's research work focuses on empathy in service design. So welcome again, and stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. I think we just quickly chatted with Luce, and we thought perhaps it would be good to kind of reflect a bit on the past of what empathy has been within HCI in recent years. And in our prior conversation, we were kind of reflecting on how empathy was kind of a hot topic in terms of empathic design methods. And that was kind of early 2000, 2005, 2010. There were more and more methods that came as sort of specific methods that were supposed to be different from user research methods. And then for some reason, I think we also discovered that in our research, there was a sort of decrease of interest in this type of publications about empathic design methods. And perhaps the reason is that they became blurred with like user research methods that also just, like the empathic design methods were very much coming from the design, people with design background. And I think it kind of became more mainstream, and perhaps then the interest of what is an actual empathic method or what is just a user research method starting being a bit blurred. And then perhaps empathy in another way was not from the angle of methods, and that's something I'm not an expert in, but has been a lot also studied, and perhaps it's more prominent nowadays about human-robot interaction or chatbots, about those kind of technologies that have a sort of natural interface with humans, and where we ask ourselves as researchers, how do we humanize this technology? Should that, chatbot or that technology seemingly showcase or show or display signs of empathy? And I think that evolution has been very interesting. And also perhaps, I think, Luce, from your perspective, you really approach it differently when you entered into the realm of empathy in service design. That was kind of different, no?
Yes, it's not the same challenges, and yes, on the service side, you will more focus on how to involve all the stakeholders of the service to make them more empathic, and how to trigger empathy on designer side, but also on stakeholders side, and also the impact of the empathy. Perhaps the first is different. All these questions. Empathy is really important in service design because it will also help to improve the quality of the service, trigger also empathy on the other way, on the side of the users of the service towards the service. So yes, the scope is different, but perhaps we'll enter in all this detail along the discussion.
I think when you started your work about the service design, because you were very much on the stakeholders, and so in the design process, there is this one thing, and it comes as I think there are a lot of misconceptions also about empathy in design, and in this specific context where you had people took the literal definition of what they think empathy is, and basically they tend to think it's a personality trait, like people are more empathetic than others, and they also tend to think this is just putting oneself in user's shoes. And they have also perhaps, I'm not sure if you would try with the room today, but they have perhaps this more affective view of empathy, a bit closer to sympathy or compassion to some extent. And that has led to a lot of misunderstanding about why is it important in design, and why would designers or other stakeholders have to be compassionate or something. And what supervising your work actually helped me to discover is that the view that empathy in design is so much more than just this compassion sort of thing, and goes beyond the layman definition of it. And I think perhaps it would be super interesting if you can explain the main models that you were using of the different facets of empathy, because I think they say a lot about the misconception we have, and how eventually when you get away from this misconception, you understand better empathy in design and how it's different from empathy in real life.
Yes, the idea is not to try to be the others and to be too much actively involved in the users, the others' perspective. But there is this models describing how to build empathy, and there are several steps. So there are four main steps, and you can also qualify as dimensions when we try to measure the involvement of empathy. But the first stage is the emotional interest. So you try to discover the other's world to better understand what are the problematics, etc. But you still have this kind of distance. You perhaps observer, and you develop your curiosity. And then there is this second stage where you will really try to enter in the other's world, and you will actively take the perspective taking, let's say. We had a lot of discussion of what's taking the perspective of the others actively, not actively, etc. But it's the stage in the different models, they call it sensitivity phase or the immersion phase. Us, when we research on it, we qualified it more as the perspective taking, in the sense of actively taking the perspective of the other. So you are really immersed in the other's words to better understand the user's words for the users of the service, to better understand their experience. And that's the moment you try to be a bit like the others, even if we never be the others, because we want to have other problematics for what than you. And then there is also this phase where you will perhaps step back a bit, and it's not really conquer, but you will use your own personal experience if you use the service to better take some perspective on what you understood when you entered in the other's world, and you will try also to better understand the others by comparing with your own experience, and how is it for yourself when you use this service or technologies or whatever. And then there is this last stage where you will really take distance on what you learned along this process. It's the self-order distinction phase or self-awareness, where you understood the experience of users, you used your own experience to understand the experience of users, and then you will try as designer, you will try to think about solutions. As a designer, the goal is not just to understand the other. You want to understand the others, then to design solutions. So to be able to do this, at one point, you need designers to be more in this analytic, let's say, phase, and make conclusion of what you understood from the others to be able to design solutions. If you are too much, if you stay in the stages before the inertia, you won't be able then to take this distance to create and design these solutions. So the goal in empathic design is not just to understand the others, it's to understand the others, then to be able to design solutions.
Well, to kind of navigate perspectives, right? So that you are in a perspective, then you take another approach, then you go back to your own perspective.
Yes, it's it's also iterative. Then it's
And what we were perhaps too idealistic about this too, because all those models, they are made for designers, and perhaps it's more natural for designers, to try to go through all those steps and immerse themselves, etc. And then I think initially we had the idea, let's have the stakeholders. So when we mean stakeholder, we mean anyone working in the service. It can be the desk and the front desk employee or other people contributing to a service. And kind of a few years later, in many of the intervention you tried, we were reflecting on what if they would already have the first stage? What if they would just be interested already emotionally in what the users or customers are feeling? And then perhaps all this navigation in perspective, it's a bit too hard. And, what should we try? Because I think what is super interesting is that Luce, you tried several methods and basically most of them didn't work for many reasons. So perhaps you can explain one or two experiences where sadly it was not as ideal as we expected.
Yes, but I think also I will share the example, but it's also what we understood at the end. I think it's that it's not their role of the stakeholders to design the service. They are part of the service and they shape the service with the designers. I mean, it's the stakeholders. And for example, if you take the example of a railway service, it's the employees, the front end staff that shape the service, how we think that we addressed your needs in the experience. And so that's not their role, and that's true that at one point we thought, but already if they if we succeed to trigger this curiosity to understand the users and understand also that their perception of what's the user's experience is not what they think, because also for service like railway service, we all took trains at one point, and we think, okay, we know what is to be passengers, and I know what's the problem of the passengers, for example. But it's not always true because we are all different, and all users are specific, etc. So in the end, I think we wanted perhaps to go too far. And the role of the stakeholders is already just to have this curiosity towards the users, and yes, and accept. I would say the most important is to accept the user's point of view and try to think how they can improve the service. But then it's the role of the designer to redesign things and help the stakeholders to design. And
well, vocabulary speaking, we moved from empathy-centric design or something to empathy building. Really, like what the aim was in the end in the company is like we want to build empathy, and that says a lot about the onboarding. That you have to start somewhere, and when you end up in a company the company you were working in did not have a great awareness or UX maturity, or how do you want to call it? So it was kind of baby steps, and perhaps because we were doing research on that thing, we kind of skipped some of the baby steps, and we are just like all in, like let's get a big intervention in that place and see how it goes. And I mean, the love and breakup letter, you would tell it way better than I, but it was kind of reality shock between academia and industry suddenly.
Yeah. So the love and breakup letter was one of the methods we used. Perhaps I can introduce a bit this method because perhaps it's not common for everyone. I don't know, to write love and breakup letters at least to a service or a product that you already wrote one in your private life. But the idea is to use methods to first to help the users to share more than just factual pain point of their experience with the service, but also to yes, to really define when you write a love or breakup letter, you see the negative point, but also the positive point, etc. And yes, so it helps to better understand the user experience. And then the idea was to share this love and breakup declarations with the stakeholders, the employees of the company, to trigger their empathy. But first of all, it's not obvious for everyone or easy to receive a love or breakup letter in your private life, and it's a bit perhaps awkward for employees who never received this kind of letter to receive this letter. So perhaps the method was a bit I don't know if it was too original for a first intervention, but at the same time, among the three methods we tried, it's one of the methods they really kept in mind because it was super original. So then they remembered, yes, the passenger said this to us about the service we should improve and it should be a priority. And in the end, I think it helped to make them more aware. But that's true that when we try, because we also try to measure the effect of the intervention we used, and when we measured it, we didn't see a super huge increase of empathy after,
or even a decrease.
Yeah, but even a decrease. But yes, perhaps it can be. Yeah, with empathy, the thing is that there are so many, and then empathic design method is that there are so many factors that can impact this empathy than just the method itself. And yes, one of the reasons, perhaps it was the originality of the method, but also I think there is this effect that when, as it's the first time, you ask them to reflect on how they are empathic towards the users. If you measure their empathy before the intervention, they will perhaps think they are super empathic towards the users, as I said previously, because they think about their personal experience. By the way, perhaps the stakeholders start perhaps with this stage, usually with the personal experience. And so they think they know everything about the users. So they will score, yes, I'm empathic with the users, and my company asked me to understand the users. So sure, I'm empathic with them. And then when they listen to the users, in the end they realize, oh, it's not what I thought. And if you measure it then after, or right after, perhaps that it's just an hypothesis, we didn't check it, but perhaps that's why they will rate it more realistically, and then you observe a decrease of empathy.
Yeah. So just be precise. Like one of the methods we used during this is they were listening to those love and breakup letter about the service that they are part of, employed, and then we asked them to recognize the emotion that the people have expressed. And that's called an empathic accuracy task, which you can do also to detect if designers are empathic towards the users in the design process. And basically, they were very poorly, these emotions were very poorly recognized. And I think that may have been a wake-up call, like, wait, actually, I don't recognize anything. So I may not be that, I may not be that great. But I was just one because I think the third method that was used was co-design methods, and co-design is supposed to trigger empathy by a direct contact, which is one of the ways that has been proven in research to work the best to kind of actually prompt a sort of level of empathy or understanding. And in the co-design, it's the same. I mean, it's always the same with methods, really. They are not recipes. So it's really how you set them up and how you create a space for it. Because in the co-design, you can both say, oh, we put together employees and users and they're going to understand each other and they're going to negotiate and do a task and, improve the service. But what can happen also very easily is that they become defensive. So then suddenly the users express themselves. They feel like in a safe space to, say all the criticism they have about the service. And then the employees were like, no, that's not true. My personal experience, it is not true. And it's a very natural reaction. So when we facilitate those co-design sessions, if we have the empathy building as a goal, it really also says a lot about how, what's the position of the facilitator to actually avoid the defensiveness rather than, and create the space for this empathy building. And so we had a lot of those insights, along the way of what went wrong and how eventually how those empathic design methods are not empathic by essence, but is really what you make out of it and how all the entire setup is done. And also we realized very frustratingly that there was very few research about how actually those methods work. So he's just said, hey, you make a playful method, it is cheap, it allows connection, and it's multisensorial, etc. So there are criteria that people like Koskinen or people like Elizabeth Sanders in the early 2000s have defined. But then at some point we mapped the method and we're like, okay, does every playful method create empathy? No, it's not true. Does every method that is multisensorial plus that create empathy? Still not true. So what are the conditions to create actually this empathic building through those methods? And it's really unclear in the literature right now.
I think it's unclear also because the definition of empathy in psychology literature is there are so many different definitions, way of explaining it, and so many facets or dimension of it. So it's already difficult to define clearly and what are the factors that built this empathy. Then also to define the characteristic of this method, it was mean that you need to know every factors of empathy or dimensions of empathy in clear way, and then to think about criteria in front of them, perhaps to be sure that it will really trigger empathy. But I think we are still building the knowledge on that, and I guess also that the research in HCI or more technology aspects like AI, etc., will perhaps also help us to better define it, because we have also to think about this criteria to define technology that's really, I would say, linked empathy. So I think we're still working on defining it, and that's why also that can also explain why this it's not completely clear of what criteria of this method, which criteria the method should have to help really to trigger empathy.
Yep. And we see that more and more technology is kind of injected in those methods. So nowadays, in the past, you had some more like hands-on crafty methods, like the design probes, for instance, which were, supposed to build a sort of empathic understanding, etc. And now people have invented all kind of VR and AR project and some more. They try to inject technology as this giving you more sensation to take the other's perspective. And I think it works to some extent. Also simulation methods, so methods where, for instance, that was done in the 1980s, by the way, by Patricia Moore. She was traveling in the US with some all kind of prosthetic to kind of feel like an old person. And she has been doing that for a year and to realize all the discrimination, etc. And then she has been creating many of the universal design products that we use every day that were super useful. And so she was kind of instrumental in this simulator technique. And more companies, I'm actually surprised how many companies now sometimes go to get a simulator of Alzheimer or Parkinson's disease or any kind of body, body problems or disabilities, let's say. So it's interesting that there is this sort of push of like, how can technology help with this empathy building? And I was rather skeptical, I'd say, at the start. And then suddenly, it was last year or 2 years ago, I went to see a VR project where they used VR to build empathy between two communities, like young people and old people. And there was a very just anecdote that has been striking with me. So what they did is they recorded the older generation in their apartment talking about the neighborhood and what and whatnot. And then they showed those videos to the younger generation and vice versa. But those videos were VR, so 360 sort of VR environment. And there was a huge difference in there. So I remember that during the projection, there was at some point one older person from the neighborhood, he was talking. And rather than just having like a fixed frame, like you would have in a, so there are those methods we call design documentary, which are just movies about people's life, etc. I could, with the VR headset, I could actually look around in the apartment of that person. It was very striking because suddenly I was not given a fixed reality, but I was exploring myself, what it was to be in this apartment and environment. And I realized also all the cliche idea I could have about that person, just about the look and appearance. And then I was actually listening to what the person was saying, but at the same time kind of wandering around with my eyes and like, oh, wait, this is what they have in their bookshelf. This is, oh, their sink, there is like still some dishes in the thing, etc. And I felt actually a sort of enlightened moment of empathy in a way. And I'm not quite sure which part of the empathic dimension that was. And on that day, I kind of re-thought a bit about, okay, what's the role of technology? What technology could do potentially to help out?
I think it's like technologies. I mean, I don't know if the VR things, etc., can really replace the experience of going yourself in the place of this person. At least it reproduces it. But I think the big plus of this is that you can democratize you can democratize the way of triggering empathy, because well, not everyone can have a VR headset or etc. But I mean, it's easier. For example, if you want to share the experience of the passenger, you can feel, I don't know, all the stages, and then you can if you have this VR headset, every employee can watch this augmented documentary, or I don't know how to qualify it, but and going on the field, doing user research with empathic methods, etc., with each employee is not possible. So I think technologies will help also to democratize this and help to
scale up. What?
Yeah.
What? I think that might be true, at least. Yeah, but I see opportunities in everything, but there are also drawbacks, right? About the entire empathic approach. And we face drawbacks. Some people immediately had an immediate reaction of wanting to use empathy in a way that we thought was unethical sometimes. So we were like, so some people in the company or outside the company was like, oh, amazing. Then thanks to, the measurement tool that Luce contributed to develop, the empathy scale, people were like, oh, amazing. Then I can just measure who is less or more empathic, and then I could recruit people like this, or select or promote people like this, for instance, within my company. And of course, that is not what we intended to do. We were rather thinking of empathy as a skill building, to take this as not as a personality thing, but like develop some trainings, and the trainings can really benefit from those 4 dimensions. So let's imagine you have a measure that your employee lack the personal experience of what it is to be a user of the product they are designing or the service they are shaping. You could make interventions specifically for this first personal experience, personal perspective. If you think the employees lack the emotional interest because there is a very low UX maturity, you could also develop interventions to just trigger or prompt this initial emotional interest that will kind of, make the conversation easier. So we really had in mind something, of course, and you can never anticipate all the uses and misuses of what you create, although you have the responsibility to do so. But we have, along the past, we have had quite some of these examples, right?
Yes, that's the risk also. Yes, I don't know. Yes, it's the risk to develop of this kind of source.
Would you say that your company has been, because now, so you've been recruited by the company, would you say that they are trying to misuse any of the things you developed, or do you think you managed to get them to have the right mindset?
No, the idea is for sure to develop more empathy inside the company, but not to control everyone and be sure that everyone is empathic towards the passenger. I mean, also, you also need it's not it doesn't make sense or so because it's not possible because your frontline staff cannot be all the time empathic, because also sometimes you need to not be too much empathic to be able to make your work. It's like it's like for designers, you need to step back at one point to be able to design things, and as the frontline staff also sometimes need to, I don't know, manage a complex situation, and also to keep everyone safe. Or for example, you need to be not too much empathic, to stay focused on what you have to do, for example, to stop a train or other things. There's this part, and also sometimes you have people screaming on you, etc. And also it's as empathy is also, there is this mix between affective and cognitive empathy, etc. At one point also you are human, so if you receive too much I don't know, people complaining too much, etc., you need to for your own psychological healthy, I don't know how to express it, but you need to you have to stop to be empathic sometimes.
A good wrap-up is that while your entire research was focused on the empathy of employees toward customers, many of the employees and other people around said, yeah, but it takes two to tango. So what about we do it bilaterally? And we also try, can our methods, can the design methods also prompt empathy from the customer side to the employee side for service design? And how would we do that? Both sides kind of, go there to understand each other better. And I think that was a beautiful thing to say. It is true. It's not only one that has the accountability. And if design has the power to do both like both sides, I think this it's more meaningful for everyone.
Yeah, we didn't investigate it too much on the other side, but at the same time, because when we asked the passengers, for example, to write love and breakup letters, then I remember when I shared to the company that I wanted to use this methods, they thought, oh gosh, they will all write breakup letters, and they will complain a lot, and it won't be critical, useful critiques that we will be able to use to improve the service, etc. But it was not the case at all. We received more love letters, but also perhaps because the participants who are volunteer, they are really engaged. They want to help the service be improved, etc. But yes, they also understood and explained in their letters that it was not always easy. That they understood that, for example, railway system, it was super complex, etc., etc. So I think and also when we coded the letters, we also noticed that they expressed some empathy towards the company. So I think also it's automatically the case if you make the staff more empathic. There is a good circle. Then also the users, they will understand that you try to listen to them, and then they will better forgive you for your mistakes. And it's also what there are some research also on that in service research, explaining that empathy in service will help also to develop this forgiveness, customers' forgiveness towards the service, and in quality or satisfaction surveys. Often there is a part about this empathy thing to measure that.
I think that's the end of our time. Okay.
So thank you for the participation. Thank you for the question, and also thank you for the delightful insights, Carine and Luce.
Thanks for having us. It was nice.